What is up, everybody, and welcome back. This is the final major edition of the golf video, the model breakdown. And yeah, it's a little sad that it's already the last major of the year. I think it's like 250 days until we get the Masters next year, but we should enjoy it while we have it. It's going to be played at Royal Troon this year, the old course, not the old course of St. Andrews, but the old course at Royal Troon. It's going to be a par 71, 7,385 yards. It's almost 200 yards longer than last time we saw it in 2016. If you remember, that's the year where Henrik Stenson and Phil Mickelson, separated themselves from the field. It was a two-man race pretty much the whole weekend. And yeah, they put on a show. That was a lot of fun. That's one tournament that I will always remember. So that's the course we're dealing with this week. The greens are going to be a mix of bent grass and fescue. There's no water on the course. It's a pure links course. Some of the holes, I believe 6 or 7 of them, are right on the coast. And obviously with no trees on the property, it's going to be exposed to wind. Now, the early forecast, it's still early in the week. Last week we were hoping for a lot of wind, something a little different than we see on the PGA Tour each week. We didn't really get it in Scotland, but this week, at the moment, I'm recording this on Monday night. We got 20-plus mile-per-hour gusts on Friday, 20-plus mile-per-hour gusts on Thursday, and then the weekend looks pretty calm, but we could get some rain on Sunday. Now, the weather in this part of the world can change on a dime, so I wouldn't put any stock into the current forecast. But the thing to keep in mind is that tee time wave stacks work better at this event than they do at any other event that we see on the PGA Tour, and that is because it's going to be windy and the course is exposed to the elements, and naturally, there's just going to be different periods of time throughout the day where it's going to be worse than others. So even if there looks to be one big wave advantage, I'm going to be stacking on both sides of the tee times. I just think that's the way to do it. In case the weather flips, you're going to have a huge advantage in terms of ownership on the rest of the field. So I'll be building some tee time stacks this week. I do think links experience and Open Championship experience is going to be very important. I have both of those in the model this week. What else? The scoring is obviously going to depend on the wind. If the wind's down, we could see some pretty low scores. If the wind is up, then we are not going to see very low scores. The par 5 6th hole is going to be the longest hole in Open Championship history. It's up to 623 yards. There's several blind tee shots on this course, which should be interesting. We heard Scotty Scheffler talk about not liking Pinehurst because he didn't know what his ball was going to do when it hit the ground, and he doesn't like not having sight lines. And so we'll see how that impacts golfers this week. There's a lot of fairway bunkers, like a ton of them, and a lot of them are going to be essentially a one-shot penalty. You're just going to have to chip out sideways. You're going to have those pop bunkers. So distance, I mean, if you hit it far and straight this week and avoid the bunkers, you're going to be in great shape. But you don't need pure driving distance in order to contend this week. It's going to be more about keeping it out of fescue, keeping it out of the pot bunkers, and then relying on your short game. I do think scrambling is going to play a big part this week. And that should just about do it for the course. Some golfers have talked about, being able to flight the ball is going to be important this week, especially in the windy conditions. So that's something that's hard to quantify. Ball strikers typically are a little bit better at that than the guys that rely on their short game. But I do like a lot of short game specialists. So let's take a look at the model. As you can see, I zoomed in to 175% this week. So you can see the stats if you're just watching the video and you aren't an RG Premium member. If you are, you can download the model. You can look at all the notes. I think I have notes on 60 of the golfers in the field this week. So let's look at the stats. So I've got 6% off the tee, 6% to total driving, 12% to stroke gain approach. I put in greens and reg this week at 3%. Around the green, bumped that up to 6%. Putting's at 9%. I didn't include bent grass splits because there are fescue. There is fescue in these greens. And then birdie or better, bogey avoidance pretty low compared to what I normally have them at. Open Championship history over the last 5 years, put that at 5%. Course fit, I have it at 0%. But again, if you do want to look at this is Data Golf's course fit rankings for this specific course. So you got Todd, Rye, Morikawa, Bjork, Henley kind of leading the way there. This is majors over the last 5 years, guys that have played the best on a per-round basis. You have Scheffler, Rory, Xander, Morikawa, Zalatoris, guys that play well in windy conditions. So I'd have this at 0% right now. I'm going to bump it up. If the forecast looks pretty bad, I will definitely bump it up to maybe 3 or 4%. But over the last, I think, 3 years, is what I put this at. Tony Finau, John Rahm, Sung Jae, Rory McIlroy, and then Akshay, which is an interesting one. And then strokes gained per round on links. I got this from Ron Kloss on Twitter. PJ Splits 101. We partnered with BetSperts to use the rabbit hole. So if you want to check out their stat engine, it is something that I spend a lot of time in each and every week. We have a special deal for that. You can find the link in the description if you want to check that out. You can look at pretty much any split that you want when it comes to golf. So check that out. So guys that have gained the most strokes on links over the last 10 years, Spieth, and this is on a per round basis. Spieth, Kim, Tony Finau, John Rahm, Rory McIlroy. Now, Spieth, not a big surprise, although his form is terrible. Tom Kim, very interesting. I mean, coming off of a T15, nearly won the Travelers a few weeks ago, was T2 at the Open Championship last year. So he's a guy that I definitely want to be overweight on this week. I added the 2024 cuts. I think this is something to look at if you're looking to kind of build a safer lineup. I do have this info for every golfer in the field. So if you want to check that out, you can. And then you have the last 10 weeks. And then short-term form, mid-term form, long-term form. I have them at 12% each. Let's get to the overall rankings. We'll talk through some of the player pool, and then you can get on your way. So number one in the model this week, I was a bit surprised, Xander Schauffele. He's actually number one in the stat model, probably because he's a much better putter than Scotty Scheffler, and I have that, at 9%. But he also has slightly better rating at the Open Championship, slightly better at links. So it's interesting for sure. I think he's finished in the top 20 in 10 straight events. He nearly won the Open Championship the year that Molinari won it. And he won, the PGA Championship earlier this year. So I like the fact that you're getting a discount, $1,600. Again, Scheffler's talked about not liking courses where he doesn't know how his ball is going to react once it hits the ground. And that is links golf to a T. So I'm interested to see what Scheffler does. I think he's going to play well, but if he doesn't win, then I think you can get away with fading him. Pretty mediocre track record for a player of his caliber at the Open Championship in his career. So I like Scheffler, but I do like Xander more on a per dollar basis. Rory, I don't know what to expect from Rory. I mean, he's been playing great, T15 or better in each of his last 6 starts, hasn't missed a cut all year, rates well in all of the comps that I'm looking at the Open Championship. But man, eventually all of his heartbreaks got to take a toll, right? He got his heart ripped out by Cam Smith at this event a couple years ago. He tore his own heart out at the U.S. Open last year. Tore his own heart out at the U.S. Open this year with those 3-foot misses. I don't know. It'd be a great story. I would love to see Rory win, but he's probably my third favorite of Xander Scheffler. Actually, on a per dollar basis, I might actually prefer him over Sheff. But then we get to Bryson. So Bryson, I don't know. Bryson, he's just so exact that I don't know if links golf is necessarily the best type of golf for his skill set, just because, he's a mad scientist. He wants to know every single yardage and what his ball is going to do. And he doesn't have the best track record, at the Open Championship, doesn't have the best track record on links courses. He obviously hooked me up at the U.S. Open, got 2 top 10 since then. So I won't talk anybody out of playing Bryson, but I do think I prefer the other 3 up there. Morikawa was 5th in the model. He's been on an absolute tear, T16 or better in 7 straight starts. He won the Open Championship on a year where there was basically no wind, and then he's talked about not liking the turf over on that side of the world. So nobody played in that week that he won because he was complaining about the turf. So I don't really know, but his game's really sharp right now. He's gaining a ton of strokes across the board. Ludwig Åberg, I don't know what to do with him either, right? I mean, he had a big lead heading into Sunday, had one of his worst strokes gain rounds ever in his career, and finished 4th. So Bobby Mack ended up catching him. That was a pretty cool finish to the Scottish Open. But he's been good in majors. He's been good pretty much everywhere. No issue with Ludwig whatsoever. 2 of my favorite plays in a lineup that I'll probably start with is going to be Hatton and Fleetwood. So Hatton recently won. He was kind of in the mix at the U.S. Open, had a really bad Sunday, but then he came back and he won LIV the next week, and then he finished 3rd at the LIV event last week. Excellent record on links courses. He's played a ton over in Europe on links courses like the Alfred Dunhill, events like that. And then he's got a great track record at the Open Championship as well. Nobody's been better at the Open than Tommy Fleetwood over the last 5 years. He's also got an excellent links record. He's just been so consistent. He had a bad Sunday last week at the Scottish, but those are two of my favorite plays. I think you're getting, high made cut equity, and I think you're getting high top 10 equity too. I don't know if either of them can win. Tommy's obviously been close a lot, hasn't really contended in a lot of majors, but I do think he's going to play well this week. John Rahm hasn't won this year. I mean, he's got a lot of top 10 finishes on live, but they've been, 54-man fields. Has not been very good in the majors. I don't have a strong take on John Rahm. Doesn't project that well for me. I'm going to be off of Hovland. So he's lost at least 1.7 strokes around the green in 9 of his last 10. And that's just tough to do. It's tough to contend when you're consistently not being able to get up and down. And this is a course where, there's some small greens. They have the postage stamp, which is the smallest green that most of these guys will ever play. I think it's like 2,300 square feet. It's only 125 yards, but it's just a tiny little green. So that's going to be fun to watch. But yeah, I don't love Hovland. Corey Connors, 11th in the model. He's going to be popular. I will note that these percentage owned, projected ownership right here, this is as of Monday. These are going to change. I'm sure there's a handful of us that go through and manually bump up everybody. I think Connor's going to be a lot higher on than we have him right now. But I do still like him. He's been so consistent. He hasn't missed a cut in over a year. 3 straight made cuts at the Open. So give me all the Corey Connors this week, even if he's going to be popular. Finau, quietly very good at the Open Championship, very good on links courses. Aaron Rai got himself in with the 4th place finish last week. He's coming off of 3 straight top 7 finishes. He's gained 22 strokes putting over his last 4 starts. We know the accuracy's there. We know the iron play is there. If the putter is going to continue to be this hot, I mean, he could easily come top 10 again. And he was a late add to the field. That's why we don't have him projected for any ownership right now, because he was a late add. DK and FanDuel both added him on Monday afternoon. So maybe that'll help lower ownership just a tad. I like Hideki. I did a betting trends article. There were 4 golfers that met all of the trends that I looked at. I looked at 7 different trends. The golfers that met the winning trends for this event were Xander, Rory, Scheffler, and Hideki. So Hideki's the best price of the 4 by far. I don't think that 55 number is still out there, but you can still get a good number on Hideki and Xander at like 18, 19 to 1. I might end up biting on that as well. Patrick Cantlay, I kind of like him this week. Back-to-back top 5 finishes, playing a little bit better, decent track record. Nobody's going to want to play him at this price point, so I'll play some Cantlay. I like Tom Kim again. He's been awesome at links courses. Cam Smith, one of my favorite tournament plays. Hasn't had a great year, but he won the Open a couple years ago, and back-to-back top 10s on live. So it's good to see him playing a little bit better. We know the scrambling is going to be there. I'm going to be off of Brooks. Probably not going to have a ton of Neiman, even though he does project very well for me. I'll have some Tigala. He's just one of those guys that you never know when he's going to pop. I didn't think last week was a great course fit for him. Finished top 5. So from now on, I'm just going to play Tigala every week, 15 to 20% MME. And go from there. He's not a guy that I trust in single entry stuff just because he's so volatile, but I do like him for tournaments. Shane Lowry did win the Open. He's been playing a little bit better. The putter's finally cooperating a little bit. Brian Harman feels like one of the safest plays on the board. He won the Open last year, playing some good golf, and he's gained at least 5 strokes on approach in 3 of his last 7. So a guy that's not known for his ball striking has been, lighting it up with the irons. Henley should be a good course fit. Data Golf says so. Any stat model that you run is going to say so, but he just hasn't been good at the Open. So I don't know. I'm torn on him. He does project well. I love Sung Jae. Sung Jae is going to be so popular. I mean, he's been a top 10 machine coming off of a T4 last week. I know he hasn't been great at the Open, but he was T20 last year, and that's just too cheap. If you look at his outright odds, 80 to 1, much lower than everyone else priced around him. Davis Thompson's going to project well because his stats look good, but again, no links experience other than last week where he was T46. I don't have a strong take on him. Probably not going to have much of any. Akshay, I think, is interesting. Adam Scott nearly won last week, 6,700. Really good links player. Sign me up for that. Bobby Mack is 7,700. He's now won. So his last 9 starts, 2 wins, a T9, a T18, and 5 missed cuts. So if he's going to be 17%, approaching 20%, I might just fully fade him. I love Bobby Mack. Love to see him in the winner's circle. One of my favorite golfers to root for. I mean, a guy that's making 50% of his cuts, if he's going to be 20% owned at 7,700, play the volatility game. Louis Yu stays in one of my favorite plays of the week, 6,800. He's been a top 10 machine on live all year. Finally back in the majors. He's got top 30 finishes in 4 of his last 5 open starts, so I like him quite a bit. Cam Young, always a guy that you look to in tournaments in these majors, coming off of back-to-back top 8 finishes. He's finished 2nd and 8th at the Open in his career. I'm not sure the course fit is necessarily great for him, but for whatever reason, get him in a major. He plays well. JT has all the shots. He should play well in links, but he don't know what to do there. He was first round leader last week and then just absolutely fell apart, finished T62. Norn was a late ad, one of my favorite value plays of the week. Seabass really let me down last week, 6,600. I don't know. I was thinking he was a really good links player, but the data says that he's not. Doesn't have the best track record at the Open either. So I don't know what to do with him. Wyndham Clark. So his recent performances are encouraging, right? 8th and 10th, but it's all been putting. And that worries me. I don't know. Doesn't project that well. I like Benny on to bounce back. I like Fitz a little bit, even though he's been playing pretty bad all year. I like Min Woo for tournaments. He struggled last week, was pretty popular. I always like Sepp Straka for tournaments. See if there's anyone else. So Tom McKibben, really talented young guy in the DP World Tour, missed a cut on the number last week. Completely don't even worry about it. He's been a top 10 machine. Good week to hop back on him at low ownership. Soderberg rates out very well for me, but the problem is he's withdrawn from his last 2 events. So the injury risk there does make him very risky. Even if he decides to tee it up, he could withdraw after he plays a few holes and struggles or whatever. So only would include him a tiny bit in large field stuff. Victor Perez is interesting, coming off of a T10. Made his last 2 cuts at the Open Championship. I'll play a little bit of JT Poston. I think it's a good course for him. And I think that'll just about do it. I mean, Jordan Smith was almost dead last week. Matthew Jordan did play well last week. Cantor's a good ball striker that can't putt or chip. I think that'll do it. I mean, you can play the Højgaard brothers, no issue with them. They're volatile, but they do, have some upside. But I'm going to get out of here. Best of luck, everybody. Hit the thumbs up button if you do not mind. It helps us out a lot. Leave any questions that you have, whether it's about the model, whether it's about a specific golfer, whether it's about strategy when it comes to building lineups or using Lineup HQ, whatever it may be. Leave me a comment. I'll get back to it. I'll circle back on Tuesday and Wednesday nights and answer any questions. And best of luck, everybody. Enjoy the week. We don't have another major for a very long time, so I'm going to enjoy it. Good luck. See you next week.